Coming to you live from scenic Wisconsin, where I am very happy to say, if you can see the window behind me, it's not raining today. It's been incredible. So a friend of ours records the weather or the rain every day. From May 20th to June 20th, we got 17 inches of rain, which is plenty. I know you're not here for the rain report, you're here for woodworking, but still, I'm going to give the rain report anyway. It's been an incredibly wet spring. The good news out of that is Krista and I did a waterfall tour of the Upper Peninsula of Michigan a couple of weeks ago, and the waterfalls sure were flowing great. Like, it's a really good time to see waterfalls. But it's to get a sunny day like this has been crazy unusual. Here's what we're going to talk about. I've seen students in my classes. I've heard from woodworkers frequently. They're struggling with their jointer. And the struggle is they're just pulling their hair out over trying to get the fence absolutely perfectly perpendicular to the bed. And this is a case where you can be close enough with your jointer. It doesn't have to be perfect. It's all about sequence of events, order of operations. So here's what we're talking about. Bunch of boards here, bunch of oak, and we're fixing to glue these up edge to edge. So what one might do is recognize that to get a good glue joint here, we have to joint the edges. So we have to have a jointed edge there. You can do that with a hand plane. I can't. You can do that with a jointer very easily. So this is where people get really hung up on the idea that we've got to get that fence absolutely perfectly perpendicular to the edge. You don't. As long as you do your jointing correctly, you're going to be okay. So what I did to demonstrate my point here is I jointed a couple of pieces that I'll show you where I really took this to an extreme. And you'll see from this what I'm talking about. Now, one of the things I can never remember from my geometry days is complementary angle, supplementary angle. So I'm probably going to get that part of this wrong, or by dumb luck, I'm going to get it right. But when you look at this edge, see the angle on that? It's like 10 degrees. So the problem with not having your jointer fence perpendicular is really exaggerated here. If I joint an angle, a bevel, onto this edge, and I do that to all my boards, when I glue them, I'm starting to make a barrel, which is cool in its own right, but not what we're trying to do here. So if this happens, obviously we're not going to get a flat glue up. Now, again, to be clear, I have really over exaggerated what's happening here. Maybe your jointer fence is off half a degree, not 10 degrees, but the net effect is the same. And if I glue a bunch of boards together and they're all a half a degree off over a 3-foot wide glue up, you're going to get a significant curve. Unless instead of this, you do this. See that, how well that works? So this is where I can't remember, in this position, these angles become complementary or supplementary in order to create a flat surface. So again, significant bevel. But if we do this, if we anticipate this, we're going to be okay. So in my woodworking, this as a philosophy falls into the idea of I'm going to make the mistake I know I can live with, or I'm going to make the mistake I know I can fix. So if you've been in my cabinet making class, or if you've watched the cabinet making videos, one of the things I do is I cut the rabbet at the top and bottom of a cabinet too wide. Then we glue the cabinet together. Then we flush trim it. We make the face frame too big. Then we flush trim it. So it's the same idea. The mistake I know I can fix is if the face frame's too big, I can flush trim it with a router bit. Here, if I work with that bevel concept correctly, if I anticipate it, we're going to be okay. We're going to get a flat glue up. So let me take a sec owned and look for questions before I launch into the next phase. Okay. Joe Vanek says hello back, Joe. So Barbara says reciprocal angle. I'll buy that. Kind of makes sense in that they're, I don't know, I'm going to still use the word complement. They're complementing each other to make that flat. I don't know. Sure. Okay. So here's what we have to do. Step one is, and this is always the case, lay out your boards and look for the pattern that you want to produce in the face. So looking at that, what I'm looking for is color match from board to board, grain match from board to board. So I probably, where that grain is not, very washed out by my light, that grain is running really straight on that edge, and that grain is running really straight on that edge. So those two living next to each other, that'd look pretty good. Then I can do that again here. So we're composing the top. That's step one, no matter what. Now, not related to what we're doing here, but I'm going to anticipate the question. The question maybe being, the question that could come up being, do you alternate end grain when you do a glue up like this? And I do not. I've seen this discussion. I've had this discussion with numerous woodworkers, with numerous professional woodworkers. And I will say, in my youth, when I was taught woodworking, everybody said, alternate the end grain on a glue up like this. So the concept is, when you have annual rings in the end of a board, let's say the annual rings are pointed, are facing down. So the concave surface is down. That board is going to have a propensity to cup up. What alternating the rings is supposed to do is, if these rings are this way and these rings are, I can hardly do that with my hand, this way, if this one cups upward and this one cups downward, they counteract each other, and net you end up with a mostly flat board. The real answer to this is dried lumber that has the chance to acclimate to your shop, and then it shouldn't matter because the stuff's not going to cup. So the real key to it is working with the material correctly, not using the annual rings. So myself, and like I said, a number of professional woodworkers I've talked to take the same approach, which is just go for the best face. Pick the best face. Don't sweat the annual rings. Don't sweat the end grain. Now that I've got the face I want, this is where things become important. So I know I want it to go together like this. The first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to put a big face mark across here. So I'm going to lay them down again so I can do that easily. Because one of the things, when we come back to the bench, when we come to clamps, you need to know what plan A was, how they're supposed to go together. I'm just going to do a big diamond that you'll see in a second. So that shows me, no matter how many times I handle these and I move around the shop, board 1, board 2, board 3, board 4. Because of that big diamond on there, that's how they have to go together. Now the next thing I'm going to do is I'm going to mark this like this, put an X on this side of this joint, this side of that joint, this side of that joint. So here's the key. Here's the magic in this. When I joint that edge, you're going to see the jointer on the other camera in a second. I'm going to put that X against the fence. that X is going to go against the fence. When I do the other edge, I'm going to flip it so the X will be facing me. And again, you're going to see this happen in just a second. So what I'm doing is I'm allowing that if that fence is at an angle, the bevel on this board, where the X is, maybe is going this way, but then because I rotate its mate with the other face against the fence, the bevel is going the other way. That's what's going to allow them all to come together flat. So again, I'm going to look at questions here, and then we'll switch cameras and do some jointing. So on my joiner, I've set the fence, it's pretty close to 90 degrees, but again, I'm not pulling my hair out because I don't have any, trying to guarantee that it's absolutely, absolutely perfect for the scenario. Now, if you're using your jointer to try to create a 4 square board, so for instance, if you're machining a 4x4 and it's imperative that these two faces are perpendicular so that when you take it to the planer next, you end up with 4 faces that are perpendicular, then you do have to finesse your fence. For an edge-to-edge glue up like this, you can cheat. All right, I'm going to get you on the joiner. So Lisa says hi. Hello, Lisa. Jason Leslie, the mini sawmill was cool. I don't know. I can't recollect the mini sawmill. Yeah, I'm trying to think. Yeah, I don't know if that was me. If that was me, I don't remember. I'm so sorry. All right, I'm going to switch cameras so you can see what's going on. So the thing to watch here is when I come to the other camera, you'll see it more readily. I'll just switch you right now. There's my X. There's my non-X. So X against the fence, flip, X facing me. Here we go. Flip. Rinse and repeat. X against the fence, board number 2. Easy peasy. So this is something, regardless of the size of glue up I'm doing, even if it's only 2 boards, I do the same thing because again, if that fence is half a degree off, on a 2-board glue up, you can plane a little bit of a bow out of it if you have to, but the wider it gets, the more critical this gets because that problem, excuse me, oh, sorry, as though there's dust in the air. The more boards you have, the more joints you have, the more it compounds as you go. And then, like I showed you earlier, you can end up with barrel staves or a planter instead of a flat glue up. So this is what we're getting instead of this by making sure, sequence of events and marking the boards, that we get the correct face against the fence. So this would be your opportunity. if there are any preguntas, to ask them. If I put my passcode in right, there we go. So David asks, or mark the boards inside and outside rather than a diamond. So sure. So this is a case, this is a thing where it makes zero difference to me how you mark them. So for me, a face mark is the thing. If for you, inside, outside, the letter P instead of an X, the number 9200 instead of a P or an X, use the system that works for you. And one of the things I always say in my classes is, like, when you're just standing here thinking about this, everything kind of makes sense. You're like, oh yeah, I got all these boards, and I got to remember to change faces when I get to the joiner. And if you're doing a big project, you could roll up to the jointer with 10 of these boards on your roller table, and then you're here jointing. It gets, I don't want to say mindless, because you got to be careful, but it gets redundantly repetitive. And those are the cases where it's easy to make a mistake. Some kind of mark is what you need in order to make sure that when I look at this at the joiner, it is patently obvious to me, because of the way I marked it, that it's got to go like this and then like this. And this is true. And again, if you've been in my classes or you've seen the videos, same concept. Taking rails and stiles to a router table, taking cabinet parts to a table saw for dados and rabbets. We spend a lot of time putting marks on stuff so that once we get to the tool, you can just concentrate on correctly using the tool, not fumbling with your parts to see what goes where. Henry asked, how did you orient the last board? So it was the one preceding it had an X against that face. So that's a one where there's no X here, because there's no joint. So when this edge got done, that X would have been facing me. So on the last board of the joint, it was like this. So this face was against the fence, what I guess is the front of my glue up. So on its mate, the back face has to go against the fence. And that's the real deal, is it's with your boards, it's front, back, front, back, front, back, front, back on every board against the fence. You just got to make sure, like, you might conceptually know here what you got to do. You got to flip the board between each cut. But when you come back here, you got to put the puzzle pieces back together the right way. So Mark says, do you take into account if you're doing a climbing cut with the grain? So you can, if you want to think that through as you're composing the panel. So what Mark is talking about is, the example I always use is cat hairs. So we'll see if my light washes this out too much. On this piece of oak, this is a great example. The grain on this is angled up toward the edge. This relatively straight grain right here is angled up toward the edge. So as an analogy, I always say, think of these like hairs on a cat. If you pet the cat in this direction, because the hairs are going this way, the cat likes that. If you pet the cat in this direction, the hairs stand on edge and the cat maybe runs away. So it's a good idea to always pet cats in the wrong direction so they run away. So, I'm joking. I kind of like cats, but not like dogs. So with your material, you got to think of the same thing. We want to pet the grain in the right direction, which would be cutting this way. So this board, to get fed perfectly on the jointer, would go in that direction. And then the cutter head is whoop, 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 petting the hairs, laying the grain down. That's the perfect scenario. That being said, sometimes you run into material, birch and maple are great examples, where they don't have a good grain direction because the grain is real squirrely. What I do across the board is my jointer is set for a 32nd inch depth of cut. The knives, or in this case, carbide inserts, are sharp. So it doesn't matter on that piece of oak. I got to think a second. Yeah, that board was actually fed the wrong way, relative to the grain, relative to the cat hairs. And there are zero chips. There are no problems with that edge. So technically, yes, joint in the right direction. That being said, sharp knives, light depth of cut, 32nd of an inch. And most of the time, 99.9% of the time, you're going to be fine. Doug says, X against the fence where? Top or bottom of stick. So that when I do that, so this is my X edge. That X is against the fence when I joint that edge. Then when I do the opposite edge, the X, that's not an X'd edge anymore. So then the X is facing me. So the X is against the fence on the edge that you're jointing. I marked that edge. That's where it goes. So Dances with Aardvarks, which is a funny name. Then I don't mean like funny, cute. Do you also mark grain direction? So I think that's the same as what Mark was asking earlier about the grain pattern. David says, confirm or refute. WD-40 and purple 3M abrasive to clean ways and cast iron, or stainless steel tables and glide coat to lubricate. I've used, I don't know about purple 3M abrasive is. I don't know what that is. I have used WD-40 and fine abrasive numerous times to clean cast iron. Stainless steel, yo no sé. I don't own anything in here that's stainless steel. The jointer that you're looking at, so sometimes when I have classes in here, things get set on cast iron. People are learning, so that's part of the learning process. So I did have to clean a soda can ring off of this cast iron before you came to my shop today. And I did that with WD-40 and a 500 grit pad. And then glide coat to lubricate. So yeah, so I'm a big fan of glide coat. What I have found is its price went up. So the last time I looked at it, the price had really gone up. So this is what we're talking about right now, is glide coat. And that is a dry lubricant. So this is another whole conversation, which is you don't want to ever lubricate your tools with silicone. The silicone that you leave on the tool can migrate into your material, and then you've basically pre-finished it. You're going to prevent finish from sticking. Because of the price increase on glide coat, I did some research, and I found this stuff, DuPont non-stick dry film lubricant. So the difference between silicone and either of these, glide coat, and I'm intentionally saying it slowly and again because people are going to, despite that, keep asking, or DuPont dry film lubricant, both available on Amazon. These are designed to be used for what we're using them for. So short answer for David is yes, glide coat is fine. I've been using it for decades. But again, because of a recent price increase, and I don't know, like this is a can from a while ago. I don't know where that price is at today. But with some research, I found this DuPont stuff. Okay. What else is new and exciting? All right, a question. I have a tabletop jointer. The outfeed table hits the wood from the infeed table. Is this a knife adjustment? So benchtop jointer, probably it's a knife adjustment. On full-size jointers, so one of the things you want to check before you mess with the knives is on this jointer, you can adjust both the infeed and the outfeed tables for height. So when knives get changed, you set them so they're perfectly equidistant from the cutter head and they're parallel to the outfeed table. Then on this joiner, I can finesse the height of the outfeed side so that I don't get a snipe and the wood doesn't bump it when I'm coming across the cutter head. If you have no adjustment on outfeed, which is pretty common on a benchtop jointer, then yes, you have to finesse your knives to be perfectly even with the top of the outfeed table. So Elizabeth looked it up. She's quick on the draw. 25 smackers for Glide Coat, $12 for the DuPont spray. And they are both, oh, and Glide Coat is 10 ounces, this DuPont is 14 ounces. So, a statistic of one, I've been using this DuPont stuff in the shop here for months, maybe 6 months, maybe more. And same deal as with Glide Coat, router bases, cast iron surfaces, planer beds, any place, router tables, any place parts move gets that stuff. All right. I'm going to be wrapping up. I think we are set. Well, thanks everybody for watching. And one of the things I'll say is, with WWGOA, there are different levels of subscription to the website. So one of the cool things is if you're a gold level subscriber, is I do live streams that are gold specific. So it's like a WWGOA, what is that called? OnlyFans page. Not really. I'm about to get myself in a bunch of trouble there. It's if you're a gold level subscriber, your live stream is at 1:00 today. If you're interested in getting a deeper level of content from WWGOA than you do by looking at free stuff, or by being a premium subscriber, look into being a gold subscriber. And we do 4 of these live streams a year that are gold only. The one this afternoon is about waterfall edges. So you still have time. It's at 1:00 and it's only 11:30. So you still would have time to become a gold subscriber in the next hour and a half, and you could kind of catch that 1:00 live stream. All right, doing one last check. All right, couple of questions. We'll be talking about tuning a joiner. I'm getting snipe on the last ½ inch of every board. Great topic. We can do that on another live stream. Saw stop ways are stainless, David says. Any ideas? I think the Glide Coat would be fine, but you can always double check with Saw Stop customer service on that too. They are very responsive. Elizabeth says, can we get announcements for lives a day or so before versus an hour before? I always miss these. Well, not always, because you're watching this one. Yes, Elizabeth, I agree with you. So I've had this conversation with people upstream from me. I think I don't control when the announcements go out. I just control the woodworking content side of all this stuff. But I agree that a little more not planning, whatever I'm thinking. An announcement further ahead would be a good thing. So Katie is the extremely smart person behind the scenes running all this stuff and making sure that the live stream is actually streaming. So Katie, you can do with that information what you will. I think it's a good idea to get it out earlier, but that a decision is made upstream for me. I use CMT Formula 2050 to clean blades. I saw that it could be used to keep a table saw rust free. I can confirm nor deny. I'm familiar with the product. I don't know that it's a sealer. Mark, thanks for your expertise. Happy to do it. Cindy says, thank you. Have an excellent day. You too. Tom, what do you do on the outside of the first and last boards? Anything? No. Because when I glue a panel up, the intention is that whole thing is oversized. It's maybe an inch too big after glue up. So that edge is going to get cut, that edge is going to get cut and jointed, or whatever treatment is going to get done after the glue up. All right, David says another awesome session. I think we're done with questions. Katie? All right. Well, thanks everybody for watching. And as a general rule, these are every 2 weeks at 11 o'clock in the morning, 11 o'clock Central Time. Some variation based on my class schedule and when I'm out of town or otherwise tied up. But that gives you a ballpark of when the next one's going to happen. Other than that, Katie?